Sorry about that. I didn't add my picture to the screen, which I normally do. And I'm also going to apologize for being late because normally I start this at 11:30, like 2 hours ago almost, an hour and a half ago, just so that I'm on time for me. But I've had a lot of stuff going on this week. I'm kind of running behind. And so I thought one of the things I would talk about, being we're in October, would be talking about Preptober and some of the things that I've got to get done before NANO. So, first of all, welcome to a late First Friday lunch. Apologize once again, and I see we don't have anyone on the live stream. So a lot of you will probably see the recording of this versus the actual live event. However, if you do come in and you want to ask some questions or do anything like that, there are comments depending on how you're viewing it here, or here. Okay, so or maybe up there even. I guess I don't know which phones do which tablets do which, or even where your computer might place it. So anyway, one of the things I wanted to talk to you about is prepping for October. And, what are you guys doing? And Preptober refers to preparations in the month of October for your NANO project, which is National Novel Writing Month, which is the month of November. And usually, as a general rule, I kind of tend to think of my writing year fairly similar to a school year of September through October. I just got back from retreat. I was in Washington on Monday. Actually, I was in Plains most of the day on Monday. But when I come back from that retreat, I usually set my goals, kind of mentally see where I'm at for what I thought about in January, because I do a list of yearly goals in January, and we'll review those in January. But usually what I'll do is I will come back and I will kind of say, get ready and think of like that time period as resetting the new year. So October tends to be kind of a new year. I do have a lot of events going on anyway. In November, I'm just noticing I did something here. Hold on. I'm going to fix something. I do a lot of things in October. It tends to be my birthday. It is my birthday at the end of the month, November 26th, for those of you who are interested. And also, there's Halloween. There's a few events that I attend, but I do have some stuff that I've got to get done before we start November, because I probably will start a new writing project in November. Now, it's going to depend on a couple of the things that happen in October. So let's talk about what I'm going to get done this month, okay? So first, nothing like being a procrastinator. Today, for those of you who are looking to be traditionally published, today, the 1st is the last official day of Pitch Fest, Autumn Pitch Fest. They do one usually, I think the next one will be in February for savvy authors. And then, of course, I believe there's going to be like a Twitter pitch. I think there's horror pitch or something this month as well, but I don't write in that genre. So I have to send my Pitch Fest blurb over for The Widow's Secret, which is my regency that I've finished. And it's fairly well layered, and it's edited to a point where I'm kind of saying it's done to go out and send to editors that will either edit for their house, or agents who may edit to get it, have recommendations on what to change. But as far as my edits go, it's done. The only reason I would give it to an editor, and this should be something for those of you looking at traditional publishing, I think that you should always critique your work. I think you should self-edit your work, but I don't necessarily think that you need to pay for an editor to edit your work before you're going to go to traditional publishing. And one of the reasons that I say that you should not do that is because that's my bird. There's a cage right here outside my office. And so I apologize for the bird. She hears me talking, so she wants to talk as well. But I wouldn't normally pay for an editor to edit work if you're planning on going traditional publishing. And the reason I say that is because you wouldn't want to edit out something or edit in something that the house may not want, because each publishing house kind of has their own reader expectations, and they have like a guideline, as you will, on what they want writers to include or not to include in the works. So just as a side note, I don't know that I would pay for editing if I was planning on going traditional publishing. Now, if I don't go traditional publishing, I do plan on paying an editor and self-publishing this work, because I do kind of want to explore that avenue. This is the right length. It's got just the right amount of stuff that I think it would be interesting to readers. And I'm also would like to do a series out of it. That may not happen if I go traditional publishing. They may take the first book and then not take anything after that. So we'll see. Now, along with that, I did get an agent request at PitMad, which was in early to mid-September, somewhere in that time frame. I don't remember the exact date. And I did get a request from an agent. So I have to send that off to her. I'll probably do the pitch fest today and send off this query to the agent so that she can have it as well. Because pitch fest will probably take, I feel like it'll probably take a month before I hear back if anybody wants anything from me. So, but I'll set it to let me know, because last pitch fest I had sent something and then I forwarded on the document and it was kind of too late because I didn't catch it. I didn't put a screen on there on when the responses would be. So that's the other thing. So I have to do that. And then also this month, ValleyCon. So for those of you that are in the Fargo-Moorhead area, I'll be at ValleyCon October 15th through the 17th. I'm doing some classes. I'll be there to sign books if you have them. I will bring some swag, so like postcards, bookmarks, those kinds of things. If anybody wants that's usually free at my table. So that's kind of what I got going on that month. So that's sort of the things that I got to do. So in order to kind of get to the rest of this stuff, and since I'm starting a new year, some other things I have to do is I have to clean up this office, because this thing is it's not a disaster, but it's not as organized as it could be. You can see that I've got like books and stuff stacked over here. That's my in and out box, and that should be a little better organized. I got stuff stacked on my bookshelf like right here that needs to get fixed and just like reorganized as well. So I kind of want to reorganize this space, because like I have like a little birdhouse here that I made. I have a craft circle once a week that I'm in, and I'll do something other than writing. Not if I'm on deadline or if I'm trying to get some stuff done. I'll usually work on a writing related thing, but that's on Saturdays. And so I'll usually work on a craft. So this is also my craft space, and I utilize it as such. So that works out pretty well for me. I also have a comfortable chair in here, right over here, on this side in front of me or whatever. I have a closet here, which some of you may have seen on some of my other videos. And then I have a chair that my dog normally sits in. But I have a reading chair, and I've kind of been slowly making this space a more creative space. It is also my main guest room. So usually when my sister comes to stay with me, she stays in this room. But I'm kind of gotten this space to where I like it and it feels whatever, but it's time to do a little cleaning up, because I've added some stuff. After my mom passed, I just recently went through like her craft room, which was my sister and I used to have an upper bedroom, which was kind of the attic space, and it was one room, and she took that whole space, those two rooms, and made it into like a craft room. So I pulled out material and I pulled out card supplies and all kinds of stuff like that. So I've got to go through, organize that, and infiltrate it, add it to my space so that it works. I didn't know which word I wanted to integrate. That's what I was looking for. I'm like, infiltrate, that doesn't sound right. Integrate it into the space that I have so that it's so that I'm kind of reusing those things. So, because I kind of like the idea of reusing those things. So that's something that I've got to do. And then I do need to pick a project for NANO. So I'll probably start the early stages of that as well. Before I do that, though, there's two things I want to do. And that is I want to complete my second element story. And, let me put this in here. I thought I had edited this, and it just annoys me that it didn't. Yeah, okay. So basically, I have to complete my second element story, and then I also need to go ahead and finish my first Flesh for Fantasy story. So, and I'll talk just a second about what those are. I swear I did all this and I just didn't save it apparently. Okay, so my second element story, if you are a fan of mine, I wrote a series, Brave the Elements is what it's called. And the first book is Fireproof, and the second book is going to be Wind Resistant, and it's going to be about Chase and Heather. And it actually takes place in a different location. It takes place in the fictional town of Hare Creek, Montana. And then the other book I need to finish is my first Flesh for Fantasy series, which is spun off from the Caulfield Cowboys, if you've been reading that series. And that story will have Cal Ryder and Betsy. See, it's been so long since I touched a story. I don't actually remember Betsy's last name, but it'll be Cal Ryder and Betsy. And the working title is Ryder Hard. The working title of the Elements story is Wind Resistant. So one's contemporary, and then the other one is paranormal, I guess. So both of those would go through Book Boutiques because that's where those series are started. Unless Book Boutiques doesn't want them, I could spin them off because I do own my characters. Like I could take that Flesh for Fantasy series and spin it off into self-published. Most likely, if I was not going to give it to Book Boutiques, I would probably self-publish it. And that would just be because the characters, I think a lot of other publishing houses would not really want to touch characters that are connected with a different publishing house like Book Boutiques. I also was hoping to get Courtesan out into the world as a print book, but I haven't been able to do that. I've got it in with the proofer right now, and also I'm still kind of waiting to hear back on the original cover art because I need a kind of a wrap for it. So it's long enough. I think that it would do fairly well. And I have connections with local bookstores and the libraries that I could probably get it into the libraries locally and probably even like the local Barnes and Noble. So, and all that is through like my writing groups, which are super helpful when you're trying to figure out how to do stuff like that. If you're new to independent publishing, and you don't belong to a writer group, or you're just new to publishing period and you don't belong to some sort of writer group, I would really encourage you to find someone because they're so, so helpful. I tell everybody this, I'm kind of a writing group slut. I belong to like 5 of them. I belong to two kind of local, one like is in Grand Forks, one is in Bismarck, Mandan, which is the Bisman Writers Guild. And I belong to all these groups. And now some of them are just meeting, like it was no problem when we were meeting virtually because then I could just join them whenever. So that's 4 groups. And then the 5th one would be Writers and Garden, which is physically, it's based kind of in Washington or whatever. But I've always been a member. That's more of a like nationally kind of an organization. So one of the things that I like is each one of these different writer groups provides different things, which I love. So one is like all about the writing kind of where they did regular writing. The Grand Forks one did. My writer Word Weavers, that's mostly a critique group. And so we critique each other's work, and a good chunk, I think like, if I had to get, I think like 80% of us, it's a small group, 80% of us are romance writers. So the critiques can be valuable in the sense that we're all writing in the same genre. And then the Friends of the Moorhead Writing Group, they'll bring in like authors to talk about like how they got published, whether that's indie published or small press or traditional, whether they have an agent or not. And so that's been worthwhile to join just because I love to hear author journey stories and how they began and where they're going and what they think about the business, because that's a good way to educate yourself on stuff. None of them have been romance writers, but there have been a lot of horror, fantasy, and a lot of nonfiction writers, which is good because most of that group is horror, fantasy, and nonfiction, memoirs, that sort of thing. And then Bisman, as I would say they're the closest to being like Romance Writers of America, which I'm no longer a member of, but they're set up. They have a board. They have, they do classes. They would probably also get speakers if they could. They promote their authors via book signings. They do anthologies. There's just like, they have this very well organized yet small kind of boutique group that really focuses on the writer and helping the writer get to where the writer wants to be, which I love. And it's sort of like how I always envisioned Romance Writers of America being. Now, Writers and Garden is founded by my friend A. Catherine Noon, and she is basically a creator of all sorts of things. You know, she does fiber art, she does calligraphy, she writes, she's just very well talented. And so she has a group that also does this craft circle on Saturday, but that is kind of a feed the soul, so feed your muse kind of a group where you kind of go, and I go to recharge and I meet with them, and it's just a different environment. It's much more of a creator space than it is a writing space technically, but I have found most writers are creators of other things too. It's not uncommon for a writer to be surprisingly a large number of fiber artists, knitters, crocheters, and people who work with the fiber arts. There is a lot of them in writer, like at least among romance authors there is. And maybe more so than a lot of other groups. But then I've also found that when you get into fantasy and horror, it's not uncommon to have people who also do art, draw comics. I'm just not familiar with all of the creative things because I kind of only do the one thing, you know? So I'm trying to branch out into other things, but I kind of only do the one thing. So I guess what I'm trying to say is I just have a lot of stuff that I got to clean out and get done in October before I work on, you know, one of these two nano projects and the other, or before I work on the nano projects. Now, so these two things I got to try and get done in October. Really, I want to finish that Elements story. If I don't finish the Flesh for Fantasy story, I think that's going to be okay because I can kind of table it till December or January when I maybe want to work on something slower. But I do want to get the second Elements story done so that it's off to book boutiques, and I've got something in the pipeline. Also coming up in October, this winter, is I'm part of the Friends of the Moorhead Library Writing Group Anthology, and that is coming out this winter. I'm not sure which. I did actually create characters based in Innocent, Minnesota, fictional town, Innocent, Minnesota. And so it's part of that Brave the Elements storyline. So that's the other reason that I would like to go ahead and get that book like out into the world too, because they could probably piggyback off each other. So I have to do that. And hopefully maybe then I can get this Flesh for Fantasy story. So then one of two nano projects, I will either work on Curse of the Caravan, which is the third book in the Archangel Revolution series. I'll either work on that story, or if this Regency, The Widow's Secret, gets picked up, I will work on the second book of that so that I've got that one going into the pipeline. And part of my logic on that is simply, and I may work on that anyway, just so I have two books in the pipeline. So it's like boom, boom, ready to go. Because that's kind of what happened with Courtesan, is that I wrote the first book at retreat in Vegas years ago. I'd started that book. And then the second book, once I'd finished it, I started the second book as a nano project. And so I think it was handy when I had both of those ready to give to book boutiques after I, had exhausted my search for a traditional publisher. It worked out much better for me to be able to give them to book boutiques and say, boom. And then they did a rapid release on them. In hindsight, I kind of wish I'd had 3 done before we did that, because then I think you could have really picked up on the momentum, because there was still momentum on Courtesan, which was released in November all the way to January. And I think that the November, and then I think it's December or January, but it was super fast when Alchemist came out. That was super fast. So the next one will be Curse in the Caravan. That will have the Gypsy. Oh, what's her name? See, this is what happens when you don't visit your worlds very often. You forget people's names. But that would have, it's the Gypsy Seamstress, basically, is the heroine of that story. So that would be like her. And then the next, and the The Widow's Secret, the next one is going to be My Fair Lord, I think is the working title. And it has some secondary characters from the first book in it. So, but I think that'll also be dependent on how it gets picked up. Because the other thing is, if it gets picked up by a traditional publisher, I mean, shoot, it could be years before they go ahead and, it'll be at least 1 year out before you see the actual book, probably, unless it gets picked up by a digital publisher. Then that can be faster. And so then I would maybe want to write just because there would be momentum around that book. So I kind of want to get to the point where I'm working on a book every 3 months or so. Like every quarter, I'm kind of working on a project. It was really nice to write my short story, Snow by Any Other Name, for this anthology that's coming up in the wintertime, just because it was a break from novels and I really needed to kind of work on something shorter and just be able to say, this is done. It's done. So I was happy to do that. And then I think the other thing is that I may give that away to my new subscribers as a free read. And so the other thing I thought is maybe I would like to do where I'm publishing with a couple different publishers a year, plus doing an anthology with one of the many writing groups I'm in. So Bizman regularly does anthologies. And I think after Moorhead Writing Group puts out this anthology, they may regularly be doing them as well. So, and I've already committed to being part of the next Bizman anthology when they go ahead and do that one. So, but I like that too, because it's a good balance for me as a writer to have some short stuff and some long stuff, and then be able to go ahead and give something to my readers in the meantime. So it might also get me some more local visibility, because I don't always have local visibility. I do, in the sense that people that I used to work with, I used to go to school with, and my very extended family, I have cousins and stuff like that live in the Fargo-Moorhead area, support me and do that sort of thing. So that's really good. But yeah, I could really stand to do a little more local visibility. I think that's everything that I need to get done in October. So really the next month we're going to talk about is going to be the next First Friday lunch is going to be November 5th at 11:30 a.m. And the topic, of course, is going to be NANO. And I will let you know which project I decided to work on, because hopefully October will tell me what I need to work on. So if this Regency gets picked up, then that's what I'll work on. And if it doesn't, then I'll work on the next in the Archangel series, and so be it. Anyway, next lunch, November 5th at 11:30 a.m. Go ahead and pencil me in for lunch. I'll see you then.